8-second delay. I don't know if it will be on your end. We just talk. It'll be in real time. They'll see us in real time. But on my end, anyways, it shows like 8-second facial delay.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Friday Night Live on Crypto Truth Seekers. I'm Jennifer Collins, and joining me tonight is Robert Stanley from UNICUS Magazine. And Robert, it is both a privilege and an honor to have you on the show tonight. So I just want to welcome you, Robert.
Thanks for having me, Jennifer.
And I'm going to give a shout out to anybody who hops on the chat room. I usually get quite a few people fairly quick, just to let you know that there's not going to be a whole lot of interactions in the chat room. So I just want to acknowledge that I do see all of you, and we've got a lot of heavy stuff that we're going to be talking about this hour. So if I don't get to answer any of your questions, don't take offense. But anyways, so Robert, there's a lot of stuff going on, and after watching you on many, many shows, you are one of the key people on the platform on this earth right now with information that you have discovered over several years. So I'll ask some questions, but definitely if they're not all the right questions for this timeline, that the messages that you need to get out or any new information that you have, please feel free to just take it where you want to go.
Okay.
All right, so tonight, folks, we're going to talk a little bit about the Lucifer agenda, AI, the Matrix. A lot of you have had questions about, you know, how do we navigate through the Matrix? How do we get out of the Matrix? Or you're tired of the Matrix and you see it for what it is. And so I really wanted to bring Robert on here because I feel that he has a lot of the key components to helping you guys to understand so that you can feel whole and feel like, you know, you're not fragmenting everywhere and having mind coituses. So Robert, I understand you wrote something about the birth of the archons and that Lucifer, you know, is like the father and has many, many names. Can we go into that just a little bit?
Yeah. Well, I mean, allegedly that he did that. I mean, that was given to, that information was provided to a friend of my dad years ago, back in the 1950s. So I don't know if it's true, but he claims that, his name is Norman Paulson. He claims that human extraterrestrials told him that Satan or Lucifer was a divine being of godly nature. He was a builder of worlds up until the time that he went insane. He and his crew reportedly went insane when they entered a forbidden zone, wherever that is. I don't know. They weren't specific about it. But I actually have an excerpt of that in that article. I took it from the book. Norman's no longer around, but anyway, it's fascinating stuff. I don't know if it's true, but it could be, because we know when human beings are traumatized badly enough, they tend to have multiple personality disorder.
Right.
So it's possible that's what Lucifer or Enki is actually suffering from, and he's imposing some of his insanity on us. But it was also curious. The reason I pay so much attention to that clue is that they also said that not only did Lucifer and his crew of divine builders go insane and become destroyers of worlds, but they also created thought forms, these parasitic thought forms. So in other words, they infected themselves with these things, inadvertently creating these parasitic thought forms. And that for sure is something I know exists, because I've seen them, I've seen pictures, I've talked to many people around the planet who have seen them. They're in the literature around the world. So I do believe these things exist. I don't know when they came here, but they're here. For sure they're here.
Robert, are they like the jinns, the demons, the entities? Is that?
Yeah. But see, we have to be very specific here. The Luciferian entities are humanoid, but the parasites, these mental parasites that are their companion, they're more like an amoeba. And the problem is that much sort of like vampirism, these things can be passed around. You know, if you bite, like if you're a vampire and you bite somebody, you basically infect them, and so on and so on. Okay, so somebody, some entity, whether they're in the flesh or they're in the astral, if these things are not physical, but they can affect our consciousness, which isn't physical either. So it's very tricky. And I just want to be very specific here. When I say mental parasites, it's not something running around in your brain. It's actually something that's external that is causing internal conflict. And they can hack into our internal dialogue. The voice that we hear in our head becomes voices that we hear in our head. And that's what the mental profession calls schizophrenia. They have no cure for it. If it's bad enough, then there's a very fine line there, but the Catholic Church will call that possession.
Right.
So it's not just these humanoid demon predators. It's these parasites as well is part of the problem.
I think I see the difference you're talking about. Could they be the ones causing the people to turn to psychopaths, narcissism, sociopaths that I see as such a high percentage?
No, it's not a high percentage. It's just they stick out because sort of like a tall person in a crowd.
Right.
You notice them because they do things, or they're very tall, or whatever. They tend to elevate themselves to society because they have no problem with hurting other people. I mean, they're very good at pretending like they have emotional connections with people when they don't. They have zero empathy. I mean, psychopath. The true psychopath is somebody that lacks empathy, and that is an unnatural condition for humans. So I believe it is an infection. That's an attribute of or a side effect of this infection.
So when we talk about Lucifer, that has a lot of connotations, like to the biblical name.
Yeah.
But from what I've heard you say, he has many names.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is he also the God of the Old Testament, Yahweh and Lucifer? I mean, is he talking to himself? Is he schizophrenic?
Well, he has allegedly had a whole crew of people he was working with. And when he rebelled, after he went insane, he rebelled and created his own empire. And that's where the war in heaven started, allegedly. So he not only had his initial crew, he's also, they've grown in number over time. And he also does have immediate family. So there are people that are not just loyal to him, they're part of his administration or his immediate bloodline. And the whole thing about who is talking to who in the Bible is kind of silly, because that book or that compilation of books has been written and rewritten and translated and edited and censored. It's like, I don't think we're getting a straight answer about that through that particular book. It's very vague. It's sort of like the game of telephone.
Yeah, convoluted.
Yeah, on steroids.
On steroids. I like that.
So it's very stupid. Yeah, it's very difficult to say. Now, everybody has an opinion about it, and that's fine, but no one knows for sure because we weren't there. And there wasn't any, if there were any specific records kept of what happened, we don't have access to them, or they've been destroyed. Right.
And, some of the story does play out from the Samaritan tablets and Sumerian tablets, dyslexia.
That's all right.
So there is some storylines that have been around for a long time.
Older than the Bible, but that's where they got those other books, and then they took them and they compiled them, and then they edited them repeatedly. The first version of the Bible, it took them 100 years, various councils of men, and more recently, after they'd finished that, and by the way, people weren't allowed to read it. The average person was not allowed to read the Bible. It had to be read to them, which meant that the priest or the priesthood was interpreting it any way they wanted to fit the narrative that they believed, or especially if they had a political agenda, which most of them did or still do. But the most recent edition, the King James Version, it took a team of editors that was headed up by, I believe, Sir Francis Bacon. And he was the chief editor. I mean, he was overseeing the editing process, but it's like, by the time it goes through that many hands, it's obviously way removed from whatever the original source was. Having said that, we don't know the original cuneiform tablets of Samaria. We don't know if those are accurate or not, and let alone the translations, because so few people have the ability to read that. Once again, we're back to this whole thing. We have to trust that priesthood class, people like Zechariah Sitchin, claiming to know what they say, but we just have to take his word for it.
Well, and isn't that like a lot of people to say, look, I don't want to think, I don't want to try to figure it out, but if somebody else comes up with what they say that they know, and then we follow them.
Yeah, but that's part of the programming here. Somebody's got to be the authority figure, the leader, the savior. One of the things that I did come to understand about Enki is that, especially through the writings of Zechariah Sitchin, which, by the way, one of those books is complete fiction. He actually says it straight out in the beginning, the foreword. It's called The Lost Book of Enki. It's not based on cuneiform tablets. It's just Zechariah Sitchin speculating, or maybe he's channeling. I don't know. I do think he was a very good puppet. He served his purpose. But the point is that in those books, it is the Luciferian doctrine. It's the most recent iteration of the Luciferian doctrine, I should say, in that it presents Lucifer as a victim, and that he is not.
I've heard the story.
Okay, but for people who haven't, I'm just saying.
Yeah, no. I mean, go for it.
Those books are really popular. They sold millions of copies, and it's, I believe, it's infected the consciousness of a lot of people, much like the Bible has. Very, very confusing storyline narrative. So not only is Lucifer a victim in that narrative, he's also the father of mankind, modern humans as we know ourselves, Homo sapien. He is also our savior because he saved us from the flood that allegedly his parents created in order to wipe out the mess he made, or clean up the mess he made, depending on how you look at it. So this is why I believe that when he confronted me that night, he said, "I'm the Father," because he believes he is. On some level, that's a true statement. Okay, if he really did create these bodies in this current form, then he would have fathered that particular line. I mean, even Noah, it's not his original name, but Noah was one of his offspring.
Right.
And that's why when the flood was coming, that's why Enki spoke directly to Noah and instructed him to build that ship. So, yep, it's a pretty strange story, honestly.
And no wonder a lot of people, Robert, are in confusion, and I get a lot of emails. People are feeling like they don't know what to ground themselves with, and they just feel kind of lost that way.
Okay, well, since you brought that up, I can understand that. I don't feel that way. Because I've spent, you said a few years, it's actually been a few decades, but I've worked very hard over the past few decades to find answers to these questions, or at least the closest thing that I can come to what I consider to be credible answers. And the thing is, it's taken this long because it is so convoluted by design. Whoever's in charge, and I believe it is based with Enki, they don't want us to know what happened, how we got here, who we really are, etc. So it's really tough to get any kind of answers at all, and then try to make sense of it. It's like so if you work on a jigsaw puzzle, you take it out of the box, at least you've got the picture of the final deal, right? You always use the lid of the box. You got it sitting there and you at least have an idea of what the jigsaw puzzle is going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
I had none of that going into this.
Wow.
So every time I thought you can find a lot of pieces that fit together, but they're incorrect. When you're doing a jigsaw puzzle, some of those pieces will fit, but they're not it's really not correct. So in other words, I had to put these things together, then break them apart, put them back together in a different manner until I started to see like a tapestry, like a puzzle. So, and the thing is, to be honest, right now, new information could be sent to me after this show, or I could find something, whatever, and I would have to revise my current analysis of the situation. And I'm open to that. I think that's one of the reasons why people find what I'm saying to be credible, is because or at least worth considering. Because this isn't about me, all right? This is about us. We're all in this together, and we're all suffering from this induced amnesia for many reasons, including the Great Flood. Which, by the way,
and I was going to ask you about that. Why did we have amnesia? Why don't we have amnesia?
Because all of humanity was wiped out. It was like 95% of us were wiped out. Mm-hmm. And there is scientific evidence for this. It's called the Younger Dryas event. Mm-hmm. So they really did almost wipe out all of humanity. Whoever did it. It could have been a natural event, but considering how much manipulation that goes on, I would have to say it was intentional. I don't know who did it, though, honestly. I know there's theories or myth or whatever that try to blame it on various individuals for various reasons, but we don't know if that's accurate. All we know is that, and the other thing about this planet, there's been multiple mass extinctions on this world. That was just the most recent one. And yet somehow this place keeps rebooting, and the diversity of life here is it's just incredible.
Right.
So I don't know how that happens. Is it just an accident? I don't think so.
Mm-mm. So many races, so many cultures, Robert.
Yeah, seeding this world. And so that's what, this is the thing about what Norman Paulson wrote in his book. It's currently called Christ Consciousness. And he talks about these divine builders that go around seeding worlds, and they're benevolent. So I can see, sort of like, they're tending the garden, not just here, but everywhere throughout creation. Mm. And that's what makes the Enki so dangerous, is that he was or still is a divine godlike being that has gone rogue. Mm. And so he's a very intelligent, skilled, gifted individual, entity, whatever. But to have somebody like that is sort of like it's just the worst case scenario.
Right.
Somebody to turn somebody like that into a destroyer, deceiver. It doesn't get a whole lot worse than that.
He had free will.
But the free will ended when it was a bad idea to go into the forbidden zone. I'm not sure why there had to be a forbidden zone. That's another huge question. Why would the creators of this universe create a place that was off limits, especially to these godlike beings? And I'm pretty sure that's what was going through Enki's mind, was like, well, hey, I'm a godlike being. I go out and create worlds. Why couldn't I go? I'm of the father and mother creator. Why can't I go and see the rest of this particular, in other words, it's like, especially when you're young and you tell a child, don't do that, well, now they're really curious, right? Now they really want to, whatever, don't touch it. So they're over there trying to.
Like the tree in the garden.
Totally. Yeah, that came much later.
Right.
And again, it's like, okay, whose fault is that? We're blaming women for that? Wasn't it Enki that tricked her? Shouldn't we be blaming him for that? To me, that sounds a little bit insane. That's like saying to a rape victim, well, you asked for it, blaming her as opposed to the rapist.
Right, because she didn't know any better. I mean, technically,
No.
in a court of law, they could not be prosecuted because they were like insane when it came to good and evil, or what was bad. They
Yeah.
had no conscience of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Anyway, that's all metaphorical. We really don't know. I don't think any of that stuff is accurate, but it's it's interesting to think about. But it's I'm not one of those people that just have faith that it is somehow accurate, or let alone the word of God or a God. Doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, for everybody that's listening right now, Robert, and putting my feet in their shoes with some questions that I've heard in the past.
Yeah.
So you've got one of two people. You have those where their whole world, was like the veil was removed, but their whole world was ripped up. Their foundation of what they thought, the Bible and religion was all about, that they grew up on. And
Right.
that was their security and everything. So that was just taken away. So there's got to be a replacement therapy here, because the way the mind is designed is to, replace so that you aren't fragmented. And then you've got another group of people that have been just in the metaphysical community, and there's a lot of doctrines in that community.
Yes.
Some might have some truth, some might not, but they're just as diverse as in the churches.
Right.
And so since you have been through a lot of this stuff, what would you say to these people to help them just to feel a little more connected to source, or grounded and feeling safe kind of feeling?
Yeah. Okay. Something that came to me recently, it's sort of like going back to when I was a child. I was influenced by Eastern religion. Even though I was aware of Christianity, I actually had both, because both sides of my family, it's like they were Christian, but my dad ended up becoming a disciple of a yogi from India. So I had access to all of that at an early age. What's happened recently is I'm looking back at that now, rereading some of these books about the ancient masters, and the spiritual science that they talked about is fascinating, specifically a book called Holy Science. Because I'll send you the link.
Oh,
I'll
okay,
send you the
great.
link. You can share it with people. It's a free PDF. It's very long, but the point is you don't need to read it all. You don't need to understand it all. I'm just going to tell you, for people that are fundamental Christians, the concept of baptism has been badly distorted. It actually says in the Bible that unless a man is, or humans are, unless we're born of water and the Spirit, we cannot be born again. What does that mean? What it means, I'll try and explain it. This is really strange to me, because it's already happened to me and I didn't know it. It took me, I literally was reading this last week for the first time with my mouth open, going, wait a second. The water is symbolic of our birth, because we're born in water. All of us, we're all in that amniotic sac. The embryo is inside the water. Mm-hmm. Up until the time we get basically flushed out into the world. So they, in fundamental view, they say, well, by anointing you, or dipping a person in a river or whatever, that is a baptism. That's only one level. It's actually symbolic of what they call the stream of light. That stream is connected to all other streams or rivers or oceans of light throughout all of creation. It is non-physical, but it is real. And it actually is where all the physicality comes from, is these higher realms. So the next level up from here, when you leave your body, not through death, but when you actually, through that ritual, the original ritual, believe it or not, was to meditate and to say the word. It's not even a word, it's a sound. To resonate the sound Om. It could be spelled AUM or OM or whatever, but you know what I'm saying, right? Om.
Yes, absolutely. I was saying it today too.
Okay, but the thing is, when it's done in a certain manner, it's like tuning a radio into a frequency on the dial. And what that does is, because that is the primordial sound of creation, of these rivers of light that create a web of light. When we enter that stream, that is the real reason or definition of baptism in spirit. Because our spirit enters the stream again where we had descended from in order to get here, to connect to this level of reality.
Robert, that's so deep, so amazing. And I mean, little synopses are just firing in my brain right now because the best lies have some truth, the best lie. And so, but the thing is, they keep you from the actual truth. But if you want to really know the truth, which I believe that you have, just pure, just unadulterated, like, hey, I just want to know what the truth is. And that makes so much sense because we are energy and we are waves and there is like a rivers. Yeah, I can see it, Robert. Amazing.
Well, I was shown this as a web of light.
Wow.
This was after I'd already had the experience in Malibu that night, September 21st, 1985. When I went out of my body, I was in this realm of light. And a lot of unusual things happened that night. But what I always wondered was, where is that place? I mean, why is it even existing? And I know it's not just me. A lot of other people with out-of-body or near-death experiences, they talk about it. So recently, having come across these teachings from India again, which are very ancient, I mean, far older than the Bible, and I believe that. But what's so interesting about, since you brought this up, Holy Science, that book actually, it'll show you the ancient text from India, and then it will compare it to the modern version text of the Bible. So it's helping to clarify certain passages in the Bible that are based on truth that have been, as I said before, I believe they've been distorted over time and taken out of context, by the way, intentionally to keep us weak and easily manipulated, and more importantly, distracted from, because what I'm telling you, anybody can do this. You don't have to take my word for it. It does take effort, though, I must admit. If I wasn't motivated to go up to that mountain where I didn't have any distractions really that night, I allowed me to focus. And I should also mention, the word meditation is very confusing because it has multiple meanings. It isn't just about shutting off the internal dialogue. Part of it is that's just the beginning of it. Because if you have too many things going on in your mind, you can't focus on one thing. So that particular night, I was able to focus on one thing because I actually felt, I was in survival mode. So it was pretty simple for me to just focus on one thing as I was saying this, as I was making this tone, because it really isn't a word.
Mantra or?
Whatever. Yes, fine. But that particular, I know there's some people that say, no, you should try this, you should do that. It's not what the ancient text, what the ancient masters tell us. That particular frequency, it causes us to resonate with the greater cosmic frequency. Like I said, it's like tuning into on a dial. If you want this particular station up here, you can't be dialing down here and think you're going to get it. You have to move the radio frequency. The radio actually has a sympathetic frequency in it. At least it used to with the crystal sets. So it has to move up to here in order to actually receive that frequency. It has to resonate on the same wavelength. And then it comes through. The bottom line is this. We can all experience this for ourselves. We can. I'm I'm struggling to, I don't want,
Okay.
God, why do I keep saying that? I'm trying to speak positively, and yet negative words will pop out of my mouth regularly because I'm so conditioned to it. That's not an
Again,
excuse. It's really
yeah.
hard
Well,
not to
words
say.
can be spells, and there's
Yeah.
all these words that were created, I think,
Mm.
even by Lucifer, that do cause spells, and it's so hard, I know, to formulate, but you'll get it. I'm sending you some good energy right now.
Thanks.
Get it.
Thanks. Part of the problem is that because I'm thinking about it a lot, I'm focused on it. Naturally, it happens more.
Just describe the feeling of it.
Okay. So part of the process is relaxing, being calm, which is increasingly difficult in this world today. And they're doing that to us on purpose.
Right.
So whatever way, however you can find naturally a way to unplug and calm down and focus on one thing, I think would probably be the best thing. Obviously, for me that night, I was just thinking one thing, and that was love. So it was kind of, again, that was really confusing when I went out of body and I was confronted by him, and he was looking like Jesus. I'm thinking, and he says, "I'm the Father." I'm like, oh, then whatever I did must have worked. I had,
Oh, yeah. One would
right?
think.
I mean, logically, that's what I think anybody would want to think.
Right.
Especially if you're asking for help, and then this guy pops up in your face and he's like looking like Jesus. It's like, but this is a big problem. This is why religion is so, to me, I feel it is very dangerous, very toxic on a spiritual level, as well as.
What are all the levels of meditation? I mean, describe. Does it like transcend everything? I mean, we are energy. We become, our energy becomes matter. But where does this energy come from? Where do?
Yeah. It descends from the higher realms of consciousness, because everything really is thought. I mean, in the Bible, it talks in Genesis about, in the beginning was the Word.
Mm-hmm.
That word is Om. It's not mentioned in the Bible. They knew it. They just didn't want to include it because they didn't want anybody saying it and having these transcendental experiences. It's going to be different for everybody, but I can tell you this much. This is what enlightenment means, is to see the light, to be the light. We are that. In our true nature. In our true nature, we are human. Look it up. Hue, man. That's the correct spelling for what we are. We're light beings. But the energy that comes, it's like this. Consciousness is the highest frequency, and that's being generated by our spirit. Spirit is beyond all of that wave patterns. It's the broadcasting the signals. But those wave patterns, some of them have a much greater degree of information that they're carrying. As you lower the frequency wave, it becomes energy. As you lower it again, it becomes matter. And by the time it's matter, it's not carrying as much information, and it's also shifted. The patterns of the waves are now, they call those the platonic solids, which are not solid at all. They're just a variety of patterns of waveforms that interact with one another to create this matrix.
Wow. And somebody in the chat room, and I do want to give a shout out to that, Johanna Armstrong, color equals different hues.
Yes, it does.
Wow.
Yeah, it does. And that's when you look at a human, we, on what's so-called chakras, they have different colors.
True.
So out of a healthy human, if you can see those things, and that's the other thing, we're actually, a lot of our ability to see and hear has been diminished deliberately. We're sort of,
wow.
Yeah,
like deaf and
sort
blind.
Of deaf and blind. Yes, and honestly, the way that we're communicating right now is it's
limited.
It's very yeah. There I go again. It is very limited, and it's not how we were originally designed. We should be telepathic. And by that, I don't, yeah, by what I mean by that is I should be able to send you not only images and words, but emotions at a distance.
Gosh, Robert, I have thought that way most of my life. Like I can feel a lot of things, and I tell a lot of empaths too. You gotta be able to fine tune some of this stuff, because when you get into your divinity, absolutely, Robert, like feeling that person, seeing and feeling their treasures, who they are, just knowing, having, it's like just a complete knowing in the moment of who that person is, what they're about, and it brings kind of a joy, to be honest, because
Well, of course.
the form, they're pure, and they've been told not to think that they're that source,
Yeah.
They
Well,
are.
the reason the reason that we're like this now is because this is lends itself towards secrecy and manipulation, lies. Because if we were truly telepathic, you couldn't have any secrecy or lies or manipulation in that regard. Yeah.
So
It's challenging. Look, excuse me. I've got a sunburn on my face. It really itches.
yeah, if you got some lotion, go ahead.
I did. No. I'm just saying it really itches. Anyway, we have not only these great capacities or abilities that are just dormant, and we will reawaken them in the future. Part of the reason is because we're being challenged to do this. We're being dragged so far into the darkness now. People are rebelling. Also because our planet has moved out of the darkest part of a cycle. Though in the Vedic tradition, they talk about the yugas or periods, cycles that the Earth and the solar system goes through.
Right.
So up here would be the brightest, and down here would be the darkest, right? So it's like, I think it's like 12,000 years this way and 12,000 years back. Well, we've already exited the darkest period called the Kali Yuga. That's also mentioned in the Holy Science. It was very controversial when it was first written. People were denying that was the case. They want, because the dark side really wants us to stay in the dark. That's why they're acting increasingly desperate to keep our vibrational patterns in a dark or dissonant pattern. But it isn't going to work. It can't, because the entire planet, all of us on it, are moving back up into this age of light.
Right, awakening.
Yeah, and it's okay. So some people call it the photon zone. NASA happens to have a weird name for it. They call it the fluff. They know it's happening. Yeah,
NASA knows. I say this over and over again too on my shows, Robert. Yeah. NASA knows so much of the spiritual realm, but they don't want us to know.
Well, it's forbidden by the ultimate authorities that oversee us. It isn't the Illuminati. They work for, or whoever, the elite, the deep state, all that. They actually work for the invisible empire, which I believe is run by Enki. So don't expect them to disclose anything or educate us. We have to do it ourselves. And I believe that that's part of the plan. The greater plan by the benevolent beings is that something really phenomenal is coming out of all of this. It isn't just an accident, or a mistake that needs to be corrected. I used to feel that way, but at this point, I am certain that we do choose to come here. This is not a prison sentence, and we can leave, and we do leave at some point. But the reason we come here is to experience things that don't exist outside of this matrix. The one book series that I really enjoyed is called the Divine Secret Garden.
Right.
No, wait a minute. It's called The Secret Garden, isn't it? Or is it Divine? Anyway, Divine. I forget now. Secret Garden. Anyway, he says that it's a bit like a flight simulator, in that you can't get a pilot's license until you master the simulation. So you can crash the plane as many times as you want in the simulator and nobody gets killed. Obviously, that's
over and over again, like reincarnations, until we're figuring it out.
Until and see the level of mastery, whatever you want to call it, like a pilot's license. It's up to that individual soul what it is that they want or need to achieve, so that they can then apply it later outside of the matrix. So if you think about it, we're not all of us, but some of us are going to achieve a very high degree of mastership and graduate with this license to practice some skill, outside the matrix in the real world, the true creation, not this shadow world.
Well, It is kind of like we're birthed into a death portal. It's almost like the valley of the shadow of death that we're walking through, but we need to feel, safe and secure, and like that there is a purpose, folks. I know some of you are so fragmented that you're like, what's the purpose anymore? You just think, it's just, then that would just give Inky and Lucifer like a heyday, if that's all we're going to think, is that there's no purpose for our lives, no destiny, no nothing.
I used to think that he actually enjoyed what he's doing, and at this point, I don't believe that at all. His original intention may have been to be the Lord Master of his own universe, but what the unintended consequence of that is that this matrix actually is serving a purpose like a classroom or a university, in that it offers souls the chance to be challenged and learn from, overcome, and grow from those challenges, and then take that skill, those experiences with them when they leave. And he's stuck here.
Oh, yeah,
and we're not. We're not. So
that's like he's in prison then, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, in a way it is. And I'm sure he's learning something from it. And here's the thing. The benevolent beings are so wise because they work together in concert. That's what it means. Concert means to work together. And they cooperate with one another. They collaborate very easily. So a situation like this looks very desperate from our perspective, but the way that they see it, they understand it completely. And
they have a higher perspective.
Yeah. That's why they don't intervene in our lives. Well, mainly because, not all the time, because that would be a violation of our free will. And also, if we came here to experience these so-called difficulties and obstacles, if they were to remove them, that would be like me going into a classroom and taking the test away from my son, or worse yet, giving him all the answers. So it's, unless it was something life-threatening, if the classroom was on fire, then yeah, of course I would go in there and grab him like that. But it's
growing up, maturing.
It's tough. It's really hard. The parents have to give the children enough space
to make
and
mistakes.
time, yes, to learn from those mistakes and grow. So this is a painful process, I must admit. Okay, I get that, but it is serving a purpose that we can't always see or we have forgotten.
We just have to trust in the universal source, folks. We need to trust that we don't know everything, but that we are on a learning journey, and all of us are in different levels. And just trust that everything that is supposed to be is going to come your way, and you'll know in time what you need to know. But I was thinking the other day, Robert, if I accidentally stomped on your foot and hurt you, when you're at that level, I believe I can feel your pain.
Of course.
And I'm gonna go, oh, I am so sorry. And
Right.
You're in return going to go, oh, you didn't do it on purpose. So I feel what your true heart intent is. People don't function like this.
Well, they do, but we're constantly being bombarded by the opposite of that.
Right. The distortions, the division, the games, all the things that are out there that we're not operating. I just keep going back to thinking of what you said about telepathy.
Yeah.
So important.
Well, that's just part of it. That's one thing. Again, this is in the ancient history of India. The masters, people, individuals, much like yourself and I, we have that ability. Once your consciousness raises back up to the higher level, even though you may still have a physical connection, you can not only do telepathy, but you can do teleportation. So I would just vanish from here and I could be sitting on the couch next to you if I was at that level of mastery. Another thing that they can do is manifest physical things out of what we think of as thin air, but it isn't. This is a science. This isn't some spooky ritual or supernatural anything.
Magic, yeah.
They're doing this, as I said before. They know that everything descends from this higher realm of consciousness. So they use that process, that technique, it's what it is, to visualize, let's just say an apple, and then it will descend to energy and then to matter, and then it manifests, and there it is. Of course, they do it much quicker than that. But there's many examples of this actually being done. So we've got those three things, and the other one is healing the sick. Jesus wasn't the only one. Oh, by the way, that's the other thing. Now, studying all this stuff about India has brought me back to this stuff that is extremely controversial. So when did Jesus go to India? And did he return there after the crucifixion? There's two schools of thought on this.
Yeah, there is.
So I would, at this point, I haven't read it all, but I've got all the books. I'm reading them.
Right.
I would have to say it's both. I do think that the missing years, he actually did go to India and he was studying with some of the ancient teachers and also the texts that were available there.
Now, Robert, there are some people that might counter those statements with that there were people that actually lived in Jerusalem, in Bethlehem and all of that during his lifespan and never wrote a word about him. Because
he was missing from age 13 to 30. I know how this works because when I was 12, I left my hometown in Malibu and I started traveling. And I did that for almost 2.5 years. And after I would be gone for sometimes 10 weeks at a time. And I remember being told by my friends, where have you been? We thought you died.
Oh, wow.
Because back in those days, I couldn't make, when you go I was traveling on a cruise ship with my parents for work. So I couldn't call them. Yes, I could send a letter, but it would take 3 weeks to a month to get there. What was the point of that? I figured I'd see them again sometime. So why write to them?
Right.
Or send them a postcard. Well, that's, so if I was gone if at that point I had left Malibu at age 12 or 13 and did not return till I was age 30, a lot of my friends would even be there. And the ones that did see me would be like, well, they would barely recognize me because I would have grown up entirely from a young teen to now an adult, a full adult.
Right.
The other thing
they might not even recognize you at that point.
That's what I'm saying. And more importantly, just a little bit of travel that I did, 57 countries in under 3 years. When I came back, I was a different person. I had a much different perception of the world as compared to my peers because they had been living. But
when he came back, he kept telling everybody he was the son of the Father or he was the Father. So are we talking Inky or Lucifer here, or are we talking something different?
I wish you hadn't brought that up.
I'm sorry. I know.
Okay.
I asked him.
No. It's okay because it really confuses people, including myself.
It's okay. It confused me too because I've had to think many different ways.
Since you brought it up, I'll tell you what I think is going on.
Okay.
That there really was a Jesus. His name could not have been Jesus because the letter J didn't exist at that time. So it had to be something else like Yeshua.
Right.
But in India, he was known as Isa, Saint Isa. And that makes sense to me as well because, people have variations of their names and it may have been a term of endearment too. I don't know. The bottom line is this. Whatever he did while he was on this planet was profound. But unfortunately, it was corrupted by individuals in Rome and elsewhere. They wanted to hijack the teachings of this particular soul and incorporate it into their political structure to control humanity. And that's what they've done through the Catholic Church. And Catholic just means universal, by the way.
Oh, yeah,
They
exactly.
pulled in pieces from everywhere in order to create this monstrosity that is designed to control mankind. It is a global government based in Rome, specifically in the Vatican, which is identical to London and Washington, D.C. So ultimately, since you asked, the religious version of Jesus or Yeshua or whatever you want to call him, that is purely from Enki.
I am so glad that you said that. Can I just share with you briefly my theory?
Yeah.
Robert? So what they did was they took something that was there and was intended for a meaning, and they took it like it talks about in the book of Revelation, chapter 13. It says that here comes a lamb that is like the false lamb that they created, the false one that looks like a lamb but speaks like the dragon, and it would cause many to worship the first beast, who is Lucifer and Enki.
Yeah.
So they it's almost like twin brothers, like they're going to show the evil and then there was a good aspect. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but it's
try to get them to worship the system of this, the Vatican and all, and the religion, the dogma. I don't know.
The best book I've read about the Catholic Church recently is called The Rulers of Evil. And I'll send you that book as well. It's all about the Jesuits, the Society of Jesus, and how they see us all as sinners, and therefore we are evil, and that we need because we're incapable of ruling ourselves because we are sinners. So we need to be ruled by them, and the ends justify the means. So that includes murder. This is a lot like what the Muslims think in jihad.
Yes.
If you're cutting off somebody's head, you're actually doing them a favor, which is completely insane. I admit that. But in their mind, it actually makes sense. So this is where back to this whole thing about infection of one's consciousness through whatever you want to name these things. I know they're real. I mean, the Muslims know they're real as well. In fact, Muhammad, his family they worshiped the jinns, or I should say they had a relationship with the jinns before he wrote the Quran. Mm-hmm. His whole family was involved with the jinn, like so many other people of the Arabian Peninsula.
Wow, this just brings so many things to my mind, Robert. I mean, it's just super duper deep. There was something I was going to mention and I just forgot, but
it'll come back to you.
But just more and more pieces of the puzzle, especially even in the last couple of years.
Yep.
Have been really coming together.
Well, it's because the way it was shown to me that these waves of energy were washing over the planet. At that point, it was 2013. I was asking for. I'd already gotten clarity on a lot of these issues, but then I wanted to know, how is this going to be resolved? And I'm not sure that it'll ever be fully resolved, because that's the way that this level of reality is designed. It's like, okay, so you graduate from school. Well, guess what? School still, it's always going to be over there, and they're going to be giving test after test after test after test. And boy, it's nice to get out of there. Even if you don't fully graduate, you've learned something through the trials and tribulations while you're there.
Right. Very true.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember what I was going to say, Robert. I talked to a rabbi one time, and he says, he says, the original sin was done away in the flood because Noah didn't have it, but everybody that did, they washed it away. So it wasn't there.
Yeah. Well,
that was their opinion. But
of course, everybody is entitled to their opinion. Doesn't mean it's correct.
No, I know.
Um,
I know, but yeah, no, I mean, I agree with what you're saying. Um,
as I said, I don't really want people to agree with me. That's not what I'm asking for. I just hope that they will consider what we're discussing. Possibly
right.
it makes more sense. If it makes more sense to you, great.
Well, it resonates with me. A
I
lot of
hear that
people.
from a lot of people actually that write to me. That they use that word a lot, and it's good. I'm sure that's great because that's in creation. There's, as I said, everything's wave patterns of consciousness, energy, and matter. But the difference is, the really big difference is, there's only two kinds of waves, and that is resonant, which is harmonious and creative and loving. And then there's dissonant, which is the opposite. It's a broken, discord, dark, dangerous. All of the dark stuff is dissonant. So what's happening now is more of the resonant energy waves are coming over us in just surrounding everything, and it's breaking down that old dissonant patterning, and it's causing those like the deep state people to freak out because they know they're losing control.
The systems are coming down. Yep.
Yeah. So what's happened is the people who were under the spell, they were enchanted by this dark spell, the dark side. The force has two sides, right?
Right.
They were working for the dark side, and they didn't realize it because they were enchanted. As they wake up from this, they become disenchanted, and they are having a breakdown because it's like sort of like waking up a sleepwalker. They freak out. Their concept of reality is just, it's like you said, it's fragmented. And they don't know what is real at that point. It's very scary for them.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Did you hear that, folks? Right there was the perfect statement of what some of you might be feeling or going through right now. But it's okay because you've got to go through that to kind of get to the other side. Right, Robert? I mean,
yeah. A breakdown always leads to a breakthrough.
Right.
And pills aren't
Touche.
Pills do not solve that problem.
No, or just kind of wanting to get,
Well, the reason I bring up the pills is because the opioid crisis is huge, and this is not new. It's not new at all. Nazi Germany, they had, or prior to Nazi Germany, I should say, the Germans had a huge epidemic with meth, and they thought it was the normal thing, like drinking a cup of coffee, but actually that opens us up for further to manipulation by these mind parasites, certain compounds like that. And since we're on that topic, I've gone back to being a vegetarian because yes, it's cruel and whatever, unsustainable. But the bottom line is, certain foods, specifically meat, were not designed for that, and it has, although we can eat it, it causes a lot of weird things to happen in our bodies. Which is this? What I said before. It's a dissonant energy wave pattern. So if you put that in your body, it's going to create more dissonant frequencies or waves you're literally absorbing those dissonant waves into your body.
Kind of bogs you down too, doesn't it, a little bit, maybe?
Yeah. Well, okay. So technically, when you eat complex carbohydrates, not the processed ones, but the complex carbohydrates from vegetables and fruits are more easily digested and assimilated so that your body actually has more energy. Because
there's shorter foods to go through your digestive system quicker, burn faster.
Yes, your body doesn't need to actually expend energy to process the food that's going in. It's more easily assimilated. So that's just what I'm doing.
I mean, I tried that for about 5 years one time in my life, but I did run into Dr. Adamo, who does Eat Right for Your Blood Type. And he's like, no, you're the B blood type. You can't, or you're the O, or somebody's the O or something. You cannot go totally vegetarian.
Yeah. Well, you know what? That's fine. I'm not asking people.
Meat is a lot of my side dish. Like, I like more of the other stuff, but I do feel a little more, I don't know. I can't explain it. But I hear what you're saying, Robert. I mean, a lot of people like to do that. So.
It's fine if that's what you want to do. I'm just bringing it up because it's part of the shifting of my consciousness. I have done it in the past for different reasons, but only recently did it as I was reading these books and I was remembering some things. And I thought, oh, that makes a lot of sense to me. It's not some mumbo jumbo. I mean, yes, it's nice to not kill animals, obviously, but there's something, a higher realization that's gone on now about I want to resonate more, not less. That's my choice. So that's why I'm doing this. You know, that's the only reason I'm doing this. And well, obviously there's health benefits, but it's more than that. It allows my body to resonate with my spirit more.
Yeah. And
That's
I mean,
all.
if that resonates with you, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely that would be the way to go. Yeah. So kind of, and we've been talking for about an hour. I mean, I could literally go on another hour with you, Robert. So maybe sometime I'll have you back on again as you get more updates. Let's just briefly talk about, like, where is Lucifer going? What is his end game? And does AI play into this?
Yeah, unfortunately it does. I mean, I think it's old. I think it's ancient. I think he created various AI to help run the Matrix, and especially on this world. It's been here since he took over or created it in his image. So what is his end game is to keep us here as long as possible, because he needs us to be here in his weird, distorted viewpoint. We're his property, we're his children, and we should worship him. And I do think he's staging a second coming of whatever you want to call it. That's the thing about all these different religions. They have their own version of who is going to save us in the future.
The Mahdi,
Yeah, right. All of those guys. And it is guys. Women are not going to save us, even though we wouldn't be here. But come on, let's be real. We wouldn't be here. None of us would be here without women.
If you do want to go to any of the biblical texts, Jesus, we're surrounded by women.
Yep.
And, they all abandoned him at the foot of the cross, but the women didn't.
Right.
So they had more of that story. If that's direction that you want to even take that, but
yeah, because he understood the divine feminine, and honestly, in the Middle East, still women are subjugated. They are not treated equally at all. It's not a matriarchal society, and that's why you see the religions are very much patriarchal, and punishing women, which is. It just to me this is the wrong direction to go. If you really want to have a civilized society, I hate to say this, we aren't civilized.
No.
But if you doubt me, just look at the news every day. I mean, it's just
barbaric a little bit.
Well, it is. It's for a reason.
Instinct.
Because we've fallen pretty far from the original state of being. But if enough of us want to resurrect the ancient civilization of Lemuria, which predated Atlantis, they were a theocracy, I believe. And I don't mean, again, I'm not talking about religion as we know it today. A theocracy would be some civilization that has a spiritual science as its foundation. So the things that I was talking to you before, those would be taught from a very elementary level all the way up to the most advanced level. And everybody would act accordingly. So the tenets would be like something like, you are a divine being of light, and here are the skills that you will learn to develop over the course of your lifetime and contribute to society. I mean, at
least they're telling them the truth.
And that's what I'm saying. Yeah, it would all be based on that, and it would be empowering for the individual, which would then empower the collective. But it would all be based on this truly civilized spiritual science not religious dogma, not political shenanigans and weapons system that you enforce, it's so either
Right.
civilized or it's not. I mean, it's kind of hard for me to talk about a civilized society because right now most people who listen to me are going, that guy's crazy. We are civilized,
Right.
What's he talking about? Well, that's what I'm trying to say. If we were truly civilized, we wouldn't behave this way towards one another and the planet and all the other life forms. We would have respect.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks to the tree of good and evil.
Well, okay, but look, we're not victims in this, though. That's my point.
No. But we've had that amnesia, like we just haven't known. Or
I know, but
we've been under a spell.
We are at this point now where we need to choose. Honestly, this is a very, very important crossroads, and if we can do this, it will show that we have achieved a level of mastery over the matrix. It doesn't have to be this way. We can change it. But we have to, first of all, we have to believe it, that we can. And then we have to choose to do so.
Well, somebody had to have the imagination of Washington, D.C. and this system and that system. And they had to vision it for it to come into reality.
Yes, of course. It was all conceived that way. But see, this is what I'm trying. That's a good point. What I'm trying to say is that stop focusing on the problem and focus on creating a solution. And that would be a civilized society. And it starts as individuals. And that's why I've been encouraging people as an antidote to the insanity is to remain calm in the midst of a crisis, to be kind when others are being cruel, and be creative when others are being destructive. And I know that sounds overly simplistic, but just try it. Because it isn't easy. However, it is very potent. It has a lot of, it's infectious in a positive way. And that's how we start to move in the right direction individually. That's how we do it. It has nothing to do with politics or religion. Nothing like that.
I see your point. Absolutely.
It's not hard, honestly. It just needs to be done. And
collectively. Sure.
Yeah, well, yes, but it starts
individually and collectively.
It starts individually, and then eventually people of like mind and practice, they start to find each other, much like we're talking now. So we're talking about it as the first step towards achieving it. But this is an opportunity. I hope we don't squander it, honestly. Right. And I do appreciate you letting me talk about this today with you.
Oh, yeah. No, it's absolutely wonderful. It's just more, it's just taking us to more and more levels. And I think when two people connect and we have the synchronicities and there's meanings, there's a lot of downloads that happen, Robert.
Yeah.
Certainly, I've even gotten more downloads today or, during our show that I'm going to be meditating on some more and I find comfort in a lot of things that you say, and I think that is important. Folks, just know that there is a wave, there is a comfort, there is a place of meditation where you can just be completely engulfed in peace, like what he was saying, and comfort. And it's within. It is within. And I think you mentioned on some other shows, Robert, to kind of get out of the matrix, you go within to get out of it.
Yeah, it's funny, but I know it sounds counterintuitive, but that is absolutely part of the ancient teachings. I think that we would call this an out-of-body experience. And the only way to do that is, from what I understand, to do it safely is to begin the meditative process, which means you have to be calm, you have to be centered, you have to focus and unplug. But the doorway is actually through the heart. It's not the mind. Right. It's opening your heart, the door of your heart. And I'm trying to think, what was the thing they used to say? The thing about it is when they say within, that's not just an idle word. It literally means that the energy is spiraling in like a drain. They call that centripetal. It's an implosion. It's an implosion. Most everything in our society is based on explosion or centrifugal force, exploding out. So We're more focused on everything that allegedly that's external to us. When we focus internally through the heart on those emotions, especially on our heartbeat, that's one of the things that somebody taught me. One of the best ways that I have been taught to really calm down is to time your breathing with your heartbeat, not one for one, because that would be crazy. You'd be hyperventilating. So whatever was comfortable for you, maybe 3 beats and you're breathing in, and 3 beats you're breathing out. Something like that. It could be 4 in, 3 out. I don't know. But the bottom line is this: the more you do that, the more calm you become. The more focused you are on just one thing. And you can you'll start to feel your heart pulsating through your entire body. As you do this more, it becomes very natural and soothing. So once you're calm, the energy is starting to now spiral in. I mean, when I'm speaking to you right now, I've got energies going out and in at the same time. So it's just a matter of,
I can sense it.
So what's happening is just shifting. Instead of most of us, the energy is all going out and very little going in. Mm-hmm. So it's just a matter of reversing that. So that really means going within. So now more of this energy is draining in, and it helps you carry you out of the matrix into the next level up, the stream of light, which again, it has a sound associated with it. A sound is Om. So Om is just, but let me tell you something. If you saying it is not the same as hearing it. There is this river of light, these streams of light. Think of it this way. You know, when you're next to a river, what is the sound of a river? It's not a babbling brook. There's a sound as the water is rushing by. Yes?
It sings, yeah.
Okay. So if you could hear that river of light as it's moving through creation, it has this vibrational pattern to it that you can actually tune into. When you're falling asleep, sometimes if you listen very carefully, you can hear the brainwaves shift. And it really is an interesting thing to listen for, because if you allow yourself to listen to it, the very next thing you know, you're into the next level. So it takes effort, but it's also about relaxing and focusing on your heart and going within. And that is the doorway, as you said, that gets us out of this illusion.
It takes some discipline. So it gives a whole new meaning to being a disciple, not somebody else, not to dogma, but this disciplined one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not about being strict or cruel. It's actually about being calm and kind, and the
golden rules.
It's not. Look, it's a choice. It's not a rule. It's a choice that we can make it. Nobody can force us to make it, by the way. But you'll see, if you practice one or all 3 of those things, calm, kind, creative, what happens is you'll regain your connectivity to others and to creation. So it isn't just about meditation. It's about, like you're saying, taking control of your emotional state and how you want to respond.
Wow, folks. So we have some answers here. And I love it, Robert. It just is in sync. Like, I just feel the waves of the energy from what you're saying, and it feels right. I'll say that.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you again, Robert, for being on. I know we've been on. Thank you, folks, for staying in the chat room and listening. I know it's been over an hour, but you've got some practical information that Robert has shared tonight that is, it's simple, but it's deep, both. And so if you practice what he said, just try doing this tonight and see the outcome of what you receive. And Robert, I knew a naturopathic doctor when I was studying holistic medicine and stuff, who could listen to the heartbeat. Even if a normal doctor would say, oh, you got a healthy heart, and he would say, oh, you have a food allergy, you have anxiety, or he would know about the person listening to the heart.
Hmm.
Incredible. He could diagnose a lot in the body from the heart.
Well, it has the largest energy field within physically. The heart has, I think, that like 10 times more electricity is going through the heart than any other part of our body.
And cellular memories. And that's why when you feel pain or somebody hurt you, you feel it in your chest. It's actually,
Yeah.
it affects your heart.
Yeah. And that's where a lot of our telepathic ability comes from. I should see. Telepathy is also very much connected with empathy. As I said, when you're really a telepath, you're going to get visuals, you're going to get audible, but you're also going to get the empathy as well. You'll feel the emotion of the person sending things to you. So it's a full experience. It's the full experience.
Human and divine experience infused into one, so that you can sense it. Then you're not a psychopath, a narcissist, a zombie, or near death fragmented all over the place. You feel it everywhere.
Right.
That's just how it's designed. Robert, this is awesome information. Absolutely love it. It's so practical, so powerful. I'm so glad that we went in this direction. And I wasn't sure exactly all the directions that we were going to go in, but this is what y'all need in the chat room. I know it, you know it, and I need it too. So thank you so much, Robert. If you could just hold on the line for just a minute, I'm going to give my goodbyes to everybody. Everybody in the chat room, I know I didn't mention all your names, but thank you so much for joining Robert and me tonight. And I hope that this gave you some, like a handle on a briefcase, that you could just take this home, visualize it, and begin to put it into practice. It's real practical. Great. Robert, you're a great teacher. So, folks, thank you so much. And I will probably be back on sometime over the weekend just to give a few other announcements and talk about some subjects. I'm just kind of feeling euphoric right at the moment, so I don't really have a whole lot more to say. But thank you, folks. Have an awesome evening and a beautiful weekend, and I will be on again soon. So thank you. It takes me a minute because my computer gets slow sometimes. All right, everybody. Beautiful people.